खबरां दा लेखा जोखा अप्रैल 24-2025 आप सब तक पहुंचा रहे ने लिकर 62 घर दे विच कोई समागम है, वडेरी पार्टी है, ब्याह शादी है और शराब लिकर ते वाइन वडेरी मात्रा दे विच ते वडेरी वानगी दे विच चाहुंदे हो तां लिकर 62 दे उत्ते जरूर मारो गेड़ा। 6285 किंग जॉर्ज बुलेवार्ड, सरी।
Conservatives, liberals called out over lack of prudence in platforms. Pierre Poilievre is defending the Conservative campaign platform's heavy reliance on economic growth in a period of deep uncertainty, while the NDP and Liberals spur overcost cutting. The Conservative leader was campaigning in Hamilton, Ontario on Wednesday, with just days to go before the federal vote on Monday and a day after he released the party's costed campaign platform. That plan promises to reduce the federal deficit to $14 billion in 4 years. It also banks on billions of dollars in unrealized revenues from cutting red tape and getting new projects built over the horizon. Poilievre was asked Wednesday whether those projections are realistic given Canada is just 2 months into a trade war with the United States. And as some economics predict, the country could hit a recession if the trade uncertainty is not resolved quickly. Now you ask me, in a period of economic weakness after the Liberals have been in power for 3 terms, whether it is wise to campaign on economic growth. It's not only wise, it's essential for a change that we grow our economy, he said. Poilievre said he would end Liberal laws that he claims are holding back economic growth and the ability to get resources to market. He also attacked the spending levels in Liberal leader Mark Carney's campaign platform. Carney returned fire Wednesday, calling the Conservative platform a fantasy of fiscal tricks and phantom growth. Carney said a day earlier that his numbers are prudent and the Liberals' plan does not rely on rosy predictions in a global climate of economic uncertainty driven by the United States trade war. We are in a crisis. In a crisis, you always plan for the worst and you don't hope for the best. And you don't make those types of assumptions, he said on Tuesday. The Institution of Fiscal Studies and Democracy, a non-partisan think tank at the University of Ottawa, released its grades Tuesday for the 3 main parties' campaign platforms. It gave the Liberals a rating of good, while the Conservatives and NDP both received a pass. The final scores for each of the parties were actually quite close: 35 on 44 for the Liberals, 33.5 on 44 for the Conservatives, and 31 over 44 for the NDP. The Institute criticized both the Liberals and Conservative platforms on the question of prudence, how they account for physical and economic risk and unforeseen events. It said both platforms included no consideration of prudence and risk in their optimistic outlooks and gave both campaigns a score of 2 out of 4 on prudence. Commenting on the Conservative platform, the institution noted that the Government of Canada's planning framework does not typically book additional revenues for new measures and should not book efficiency savings before having been achieved, since past results have proven disappointing. The NDP received a score of 3 out of 4 on prudence because its platform included a small contingency reserve and made use of the Bank of Canada's recent economic scenarios for a wider range of tariff impacts. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Edmonton on Wednesday, warning Canadians about program cuts under a possible Liberal government and arguing that electing new Democrats member of Parliament would help keep the Liberals in check. The Liberal platform plans for $28 billion in unspecified cost cuts from increased government productivity. Carney said Tuesday that he expects a Liberal government would actually exceed those cost reductions. That is going to be devastating, Singh said Wednesday. We cannot afford that. We can't let him have all the power. You need new Democrats to fight back and stop those cuts. Carney was asked during a campaign stop in Victoria on Wednesday to respond to the NDP's claim that his planned cuts would sacrifice programs Canadians care about. He answered by affirming his commitment to $10 a day daycare, dental care and pharmacare funding, the CBC, and continuing to address environmental concerns. Progressive policies, I think of them more as policies and institutions that are at the heart of this country because we care about each other, Khani said. But he claimed a conservative government would spell the end of those priorities for progressive voters. Polyev has said during the campaign that Canadians currently enrolled in the government's pharmacare or dental care plans will not lose that coverage under a conservative government. Polls suggest the Liberals are leading the Conservatives, and 55% of those polled by Ledger recently said they think Carney and the Liberals will win. Singh has been seen support for his party dwindle during the campaign. The latest Ledger poll suggests just 8% of Canadians are planning to vote for a new Democrat. Singh is planning to campaign in Edmonton on Wednesday before participating in a virtual forum with the Assembly of First Nations.
ਫੈਡਰਲ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਪੀਅਰ ਪੋਲੀਵਰ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਰੂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਧਿਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਰਚੇ ਹੀ ਖਰਚੇ ਨੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧੂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਖਰਚੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਨਾਗਰਿਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਸੋਚਣਾ ਕਿ ਤੀਜੀ ਵਾਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਚੌਥੀ ਟਰਮ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਲਿਬਰਲਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਫੇਰ ਦੇਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਆਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਮਾਰਕ ਕਾਰਨੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਐਲਾਨਨਾਮਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੱਖ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕਰੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ $10 ਚਾਈਲਡ ਕੇਅਰ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਡੈਂਟਲ ਕੇਅਰ ਫਰਮਾ ਕੇਅਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ ਪਰ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਹੋਰ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਉਧਰ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਮੁਖੀ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਅਗਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਿਤਾ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਮਨਮਾਨੀਆਂ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਨਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਣ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਮਰਥਕ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਕਾਮਯਾਬ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੱਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪਹਿਰਾ ਦੇ ਸਕਣ ਜਦ ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮਾਪਦੰਡ ਆ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 8% ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵ ਤੇ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਸਵਾ ਮੁਕਾਬਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ
Vancouver looks at reducing social housing requirements in downtown East Side developments. The city of Vancouver is asking for feedback on proposed changes to its housing policies in the downtown east side. The proposed changes include taller buildings and updated definitions to align with funding requirements. However, it's a possible change in the mix of social and market rentals that's getting the most attention. Staff at City Hall suggest a percentage of suites dedicated to social housing should drop from 60% to 20% in a bid to attract more developers. It says it's aimed at increasing affordable housing and replacing aging single-room occupancy SROs hotels. The current definition on social housing in the DTES are an existing inclusionary housing policy which sets out the required mix of social and market rental housing in the downtown east side Oppenheimer district DEOD, compounded by high construction cost and current market conditions, have proven to be a significant barrier to the construction of social housing, the city said in a statement on Wednesday. The proposed changes are intended to address the housing crisis and enable the creation of affordable housing in the DTS, taking into consideration the financial realities of building new units, it added. Along with changing the required percentage of social housing suites, the changes would also allow private developers to build below market rents with 10% of units at deeply discounted rents to replace SROs. While proposed changes would reduce the numbers of shelter rate housing and social housing units required for individual projects, they would improve the financial viability of these projects, leading to more overall social housing being built, the city claimed. The proposed changes also align with the DTE's plan's goals to replace private SROs with self-contained social housing and offer a range of housing options for various income levels angles, including market rentals as well as the council's recent direction to prioritize SRO replacement. The city says it would be protecting low-income residents in the neighborhood by offering tenants the right to return to the new building at their existing rent or at a 50% discount, whichever is lower. The city would also require landlords to pay off all moving expenses rather than the current flat rate. Vancouver residents can express their feedback from now until May 16. Your input will help inform a recommendation that will be presented to council later this year. City Council will vote on the recommendations later this year.
ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਘਰ ਨੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ SRO ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੋਟਲਸ ਨੇ ਵਨ ਰੂਪ ਆਕੂਪੈਂਸੀ ਵਾਲੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਲੈ ਜਾਣੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ 16 ਮਈ ਤੱਕ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਲਾਹ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਦਰਜ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਮੰਗ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਕਾਰਨ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲੋ ਰੈਂਟਲਸ ਲੋਕ ਨੇ SRO ਦੀ ਆਕੂਪੈਂਸੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 60% ਤੋਂ ਘਟਾ ਕੇ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਦਰ 20% ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਏਰੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੜ ਬਹਾਲ ਤੇ ਡਿਵੈਲਪ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਰਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਯੂਨਿਟਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਮਾਰਕੀਟ ਤੋਂ ਘੱਟ ਕਿਰਾਏ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਣ।
Vancouver police deny whistleblowers' claims of DTES task force arrest quotas. An anonymous whistleblower claims that the managers at the Vancouver Police Department Task Force Barrage have imposed quotas for arresting drug users in the city's downtown east side, but police deny it. The whistleblower, claiming to be a VPD officer, submitted their complaint to the Office of the Police Complaint Commissioner (OPCC) on March 8. I write as a VPD officer disgusted by the political motivated crackdown that has been launched by the VPD. This is entirely motivated by politics, the letter begins, claiming those in charge have been setting quotas. The management sent an email that set an expectation that each team working in the DTS would arrest redacted on drug charges. The OPCC says legally the board must now initiate an investigation or a study, ask Chief Adam Palmer to launch an investigation or dismiss the complaint with reasons. A redacted version of the letter was included in the Vancouver Police Board agenda for its Thursday, April 24th meeting. Language included in an OPCC email to the board explicitly describes the whistleblower as a VPD member. VPD spokesperson Sergeant Steve Edidson says it's not clear whether that's an accurate representation. We have no way of knowing whether or not this letter actually came from a police officer. It may have, and that's fine, said Edidson, adding that it does not change the task force performance. As for the allegations of quotas, Edidson says there is no basis to that. He said the department has expectations for officers on the task force, which has resulted in 314 arrest warrants and 193 reports to Crown Council since its inception. The Barrage Task Force was announced mid-February of this year together by Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim for the Vancouver Police Chief Adam Palmer. Sim and Palmer described it as the new long-term initiative targeting organized crime and public safety concerns in the downtown east side. According to an update provided by the VPD last month, nearly 200 weapons were seized in the first 4 weeks of the initiative, and assaults with weapons also decreased 30% compared to the previous 4 weeks. The task force, which costs the city $5 million in initiative, has been bailed as well as criticized from the get-go. Critics say the increased budget of the VPD has not led to reduced crime since Sim took office in 2022. The annual VPD budget has grown by almost $93 million. According to a study published in the Canadian Public Policy Journal, net increases in spending per capita are not associated with greater net decreases in crime rates. Fiona York, an advocate for people who are homeless in the DTES and nearby encampments, is equally critical for Task Force Barrage. She says that the Stigmatizing and discriminatory task force is making the situation in the DTES so much worse. She says the city's works in the DTES is lacking in compassion and collaboration with people who live in the community. We all could question whether the task force is effective. Is this actually making people feel safer in the downtown east side? Is this actually helping people? Is contributing to anything other than just a stigma, further stigma and further obscuring people, or making people hide away in the shadows where we already know it just furthering the overdose crisis and it's not helping at all? The email from the whistleblower says they were taught that officers had discretion when deciding whether to charge people, but now it's clear they don't value their officers' discretion in decision making and they're setting quotas. I don't think this is legal or right, the email says. Edison says that's not true. He asserts VPD officers have always had discretion on whether to make an arrest or issue a ticket, and that continues today as part of the task force barrage.
DTES ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ BPD ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਕਰਮਚਾਰੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਗਈ ਭੇਜੀ ਗਈ ਈਮੇਲ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਸ ਤੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੋ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਨੇ ਡਿਨਾਈ ਕੀਤਾ ਔਰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਟਾਸਕ ਹੈ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਡਾਊਨਟਾਊਨ ਈਸਟ ਸਾਈਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਅਫਸਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਰੈਸਟ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੋਟਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਨਿਰਧਾਰਿਤ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਵਾਲਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਨਕਾਰਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਫਰਵਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਹੈ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਡੇਰੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਸ਼ਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਰ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਅਸਲਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਮਦ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਔਰ ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਨਕਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਪਰ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਜਸਟੀਫਾਈ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਸਮੇਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਵੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ।
Men arrested charged after tourists violently assaulted in Vancouver. A man is facing charges after a woman was violently attacked while walking the seawall this month and sharing her story online. The victim says she was a tourist to Vancouver and was walking along the seawall near Stanley Park when she was brutally and repeatedly attacked by a stranger in the early hours of Tuesday, April 15th. In a video posted online, the woman says she was on vacation strolling near the water just after midnight when a man spotted her and slammed her to the ground. She says the attack that ensued was vicious and she tried to escape, but he caught her up with her, forcing her to fight him off 4 separate times. The woman says she believes the man intended to kill her. Sergeant Steve Edison said, with the Vancouver Police Department confirms more than 20 police officers responded to the incident and were able to apprehend the suspect. He says the department refrained from publicizing details of the incident due to its sensitive nature and the speed at which the arrest was made, but commended the victim for coming forward. I can't say enough about her resiliency, her tenacity, her composure and her courage in dealing with an extremely violent attack on her. To fight through that attack, to survive that attack and how to come forward and tell her story is extremely commendable. He says a 34-year-old man who was known to police is in custody facing charges of assault causing bodily harm related to the incident. 2 days prior, the suspect was arrested after allegedly assaulting a peace officer in Surrey and uttering threats. He was out on bail when the attack on the woman happened. Edison says VPD will gauge the necessity of notifying the public if the man does make bail.
Vancouver ਦੇ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਔਰਤ ਤੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਅਸੌਲਟ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੋਸ਼ੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰ ਤਾਂ ਕਰ ਲਿਆ, ਪਰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰਤ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਹੱਡਬੀਤੀ ਦੱਸੀ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ 12 ਵਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਨੇ ਅਟੈਕ ਕੀਤਾ, ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹਮਲੇ ਕਰਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਉਧਰੋਂ BPD ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਪੁਸ਼ਟੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੱਕ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਹੈ, ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ 20 ਕਾਲਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਪਹੁੰਚੀਆਂ ਔਰ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਹਿਰਾਸਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੈ ਲਿਆ ਔਰ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਉਹੀ 34 ਸਾਲਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਸਰੀ ਵਿਖੇ ਦੋਸ਼ ਦੇ ਤਹਿਤ ਗ੍ਰਿਫਤਾਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਉਹ ਬੇਲ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਸੀ।
Lind stockpiling chocolate in Canada amid tariff uncertainty. Chocolate maker Lind and Sprungly says it's increasing its stockpiles of product in Canada amid uncertainty over the unfolding tariff situation with the U.S. President Donald Trump enacted tariffs on Canada and Mexico earlier this year, only to delay some of them shortly after and more recently imposed sweeping tariffs on many countries before delaying some of those too. Meanwhile, Canada has introduced reciprocal tariffs on a range of goods coming from the U.S. In March, Lind said it was shifting some production from the US to Europe to avoid price impacts for Canadian customers. But the now company says it hasn't adjusted its sourcing strategy as the landscape is evolving quickly. A spokesperson said the company will decide whether or not to make changes to sourcing once the situation is clearer and more stable, with shifting sourcing to Europe being one option on the table.
जो कि चॉकलेट बनाते हैं उन्होंने जी इस गल का खुलासा किया कि जिहड़ा टैरिफ है उस दे मद्देनज़र वो वध तो वध जिहड़ा चॉकलेट है उसनूं अपने कब्जे दे विच कर रहे हैं और पिछले दिनों दे विच टैरिफ दे हालातां दे विच कीमतां दे विच होण वाले वाधे तो पहलां जिहड़ा ਇਹ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ शुरू होई सी और उन्होंने ये भी गल कही सी कि वो अपने आप की अमेरिका के उत्ते निर्भरता नूं घटा के यूरोप दे विच है जिहड़ा उस तों खरीदो फरोख्त दे वल नूं भी तरजीह देणगे। पर नाल उन्होंने हुण इस गल दा भी खुलासा किया कि जिहड़ी टैरिफ वाली हालात ने गवांढी मुल्क दे नाल दिन प्रति दिन बड़े तेजी नाल उन्हां दे विच तब्दीली आउंदी है और उस दे उत्ते चंगी तरह देख रख रहे हैं।
Government receives fourth extension to fix unconstitutional Lost Canadians issue. The federal government has received a fourth extension to pass legislation to grant citizenship to lost Canadians after the existing law was ruled unconstitutional. Lost Canadian is a term applied to people who were born outside of the country to Canadian parents who were also born in another country. In 2009, the Conservative federal government of the day changed the law so that Canadians who were born abroad could not pass down their citizenship unless their child was born in Canada. The Ontario Superior Court of Justice ruled in late 2023 that the law was unconstitutional and the government agreed with the ruling. The government introduced citizenship legislation meant to remedy the issue in March of 2024, 1 month before the original deadline, but the bill did not pass before Parliament was dissolved. The government applied for 1-year extension, but Justice Jasmine Akbar Ali set a deadline of November 20, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. In her decision, she said that should be enough time for the next government to implement remedial legislation if it makes it a priority. Sujit Chaudhary, a lawyer representing some of the lost Canadians, said that Akbar Ali has been incredibly patient with the government and has given them more than enough time to pass the legislation. It's matter of public record that the government mismanaged the parliamentary agenda with this file, and the court made a finding that fact in their December 2024 decision, he said. I hope now the government will redouble its efforts to reprioritize this legislation and ensure its passage in the next parliament, because this process can't run forever. Akbar Ali has criticized the Liberal government in her decision, saying she is granted the extensions because of the potential for harm caused by the Harper-era legislation being declared invalid. The government previously argued that if the legislation was struck down with no replacement, an unknown number of people would automatically receive Canadian citizenship. When the government applied for this latest extension, then Immigration Minister Mark Miller authorized the use of interim measures to provide citizenship to some of the affected Canadians. Akbar Ali wrote that she was not prepared to grant 1-year extension due to uncertainty about how these interim measures would work with the new government set to be elected on Monday. The judge arrived at the November 20th deadline by citing the House of Commons schedule. The Commons is set to return on May 26, and after roughly 3 months summer break, MPs will come back to Ottawa around September 15 for the fall sitting. She wrote that by her count, this equals or surpasses the time that has been and will be lost due to Parliament's prorogation in January, the federal election, and the summer recess.
ਲਾਸਟ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਲਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੋਰਟ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨਵੀਂ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਏਜੰਡਾ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਬਦੀਲੀਆਂ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੈ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਇਸ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਨਵੰਬਰ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਤੱਕ ਨਾਮਜ਼ਦ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਸੀ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਕਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਬਾਹਰ ਜੰਮੇ ਹੋਏ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਟੋਮੈਟਿਕਲੀ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿਟੀਜ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪ ਆ ਉਹ ਨਾ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਵੇ। ਔਰ ਫਿਰ ਇਸ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਨੇ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਸੀ। ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ ਬਿੱਲ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਾਸ ਹੋਣਾ ਸੀ ਸੋਧ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਕੁਝ ਦਿਨ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਡਿਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਮਰਥਕ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੋਰਟ ਦੇ ਦਰਵਾਜ਼ੇ ਖੜਕਾਏ ਸਨ ਔਰ ਕੋਰਟ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਹਿੱਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵਕਤ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਸਮਾਬੰਦੀ ਨੂੰ ਵਧਾਉਂਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਦੱਸ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਮੁੜ ਵਾਪਸ ਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਔਰ 3 ਸਮੇਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਛੁੱਟੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਪਾਸ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਗਜ਼ੀ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸਮਾਂ ਗਵਾਉਣਗੇ ਨਹੀਂ, ਪਰ ਵਰਿਸ਼ਠ ਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਇਓਰਟੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰਮੁੱਖਤਾ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ बारे कोई फैसला लिया जावे।
इसी के साथ हमें दी जगह इजाजत। खबरों दा लेखा जोखा के इस सेगमेंट से जिसे आप तक पहुंचा रहे थे लिकर 62। जी हाँ, घर पे कोई गेस्ट आ रहे, कोई गैदरिंग्स हो रहे, सेलिब्रेशंस हो रहे, शादी ब्याह है या फिर एनिवर्सरी या कोई और पार्टीज, बर्थडेज वगैरह, या वैसे ही हल्ला गुल्ला करना चाहते हो, शराब की ज़रूरत है तो बेस्ट एंड अफोर्डेबल लिकर आपको मिल सकता है लिकर 62 से। 6285 किंग जॉर्ज बुलेवार्ड, लिकर 62।